Hi, Donald here with Floating Feathers Kayak Fly Fishing School with another tips and tricks. And this tips and tricks is on tethers and leashes, and we're going to throw in some proper use of what type of carabiners to use on your tethers and leashes. So the first thing is first, tethers and leashes are going to be used in kayak angling. It is just going to happen. I am here to help you decide what to use, what is the best practices safety-wise to use for your tethers and leashes. And the first thing we have to understand is a tether or leash. What is it designed to do? Well, it's designed to keep your stuff from going overboard and sinking to the bottom of the lake or and get into the ocean. Even if it floats, it's nice to have something tethered to your kayak so that it doesn't drapes off and you lose it forever. With that comes responsibilities for making sure that those tethers and leashes are safe to use and safe to you while you're using them on the kayak. So first things first, what is that tether or leash made out of? It must be made out of something that is cuttable. If you've looked at my safety videos before, a knife goes on your PFD. There is a reason a knife goes on your PFD, right? It's to cut anything that you can that may entangle you. And a tether or leash is an entanglement concern, okay? Even if you're not tipped over, even if you're not capsized, this could wrap around your leg, around your wrist, whatever it can be. And if you panic and you don't get this off, you have to be able to cut this. If it ties itself in a knot and it's a steel cable, like a steel aircraft cable or something like that, you're not going to be able to get that knot out quickly enough, all right? And you're not going to be able to cut it, right, with a knife. You want something that you can cut with a knife very quickly. So 550 cord, parachute cord, elastic bungee cord type stuff, kite string, things like that. That is very easily cuttable with a knife. That is first thing. That must be what it's made out of. Second thing is length. I understand nobody wants to lose your rods and reels, your gear, your tackle box, whatever you may have tethered or leashed, even your paddle. You know, some paddles cost up $500 or more. Rods and reels can cost $1,000. I get this. I totally understand the concern. The length of your tether or leash should only be long enough to allow you to reach that item when it is tethered to the kayak. So you don't need something that's tethered, a 5-foot leash or 4-foot leash like this. This is entirely too long. If your rod or reel is this far away from you, you're not going to be able to reach it safely when you're on the water anyway. So keep in mind, when you're using a leash or a tether, it's only long enough to mitigate the loss of that item when on the kayak. So in most cases, other than a paddle leash will be a little bit longer. So your paddle leash may be 36 inches long, so you can stand up and paddle if you need to. But most rod leashes are only going to be about 12 to 18 inches long, because that's all you need them. That's really all the length you need to ensure that it does not go over the side when not in use, or if a fish happens to grab it, if you're trolling or something like that. You don't need 3, 4, 5 feet on a tether, on a rod tether or rod leash. You just don't need it. The reason for that is the minimum length you want is the minimum length you could need to have to access it when on the water. Anything more than that adds to the entanglement concerns, even if you haven't capsized, but exponentially when you do capsize, because now you have all these rods hanging down that fell out, and you've got 5 feet, 3 feet, 4 feet on each one of the rods. And a lot of people will have 5, 10 rods, upwards of 15 rods I've seen on kayaks. So now if you've got a tether on each one of those, even if you only have 5 rods, you now have 5 entanglement concerns to think about and to worry about and to avoid when you do capsize. It also mitigates the fact that the tethers can entangle with themselves. If you've got a lot of rods and reels or a lot of tethers and leashes out there, the longer these are, the more chance they are getting twisted up or wrapped around or entangled amongst themselves. And now you've got just a cluster of tethers and leashes that's going to cause a concern while you're in the kayak. And again, exponentially so when you tip over or when you capsize. Third, and equally as important, and this is probably the part that's overlooked the most by kayak anglers and a lot by kayakers, is that the type of carabiner you want to use is a locking carabiner. If you guys can see this, that is a locking carabiner. It's got a barrel lock on here. It's actually really easy to use one-handed. I'll try to put my hand behind that so you can see it. So it locks, it will not open. I take one thumb, screw it down, it opens. See how that is? I can screw it back up, and now it's locked. Okay, that is a locking carabiner. And there are several styles of locking carabiners. Here's one that has a little slide lock on it. And this slide lock right here prevents it from opening, so it will not open. You push that lock up, slide it up, and it unlocks. Slide it back down, and it locks again. So that's a slide lock. That is two types of locking carabiners. And there is a reason we do not want to use a non-locking carabiner. So I'm going to use non-locking carabiner, or unlocking, non-locking, I'm not sure how you quite say that, but it just opens and closes real easy, right? Now, I understand this is really easy to, just put on your rod leash or clip to the handle of your kayak or whatever you're going to clip it to. I understand the ease and convenience of this. I do. It's really quick, and it's on, right? That same ease and convenience can cause you very, very critical things to happen, dangerous things to happen if you capsize, or even if you're not capsized, by allowing anything that penetrates that to get locked in there, right? And what I mean is, let's say you're out there fishing, and this is just one example. I'll give you a couple. But you're out there fishing. You're using the rod that was tethered, right? You had a rod tethered to this, and you drop, you pick up your rod, you're fishing, you're casting it, whatever, and you've got your leash, and it hangs over the side, even if it goes underneath the water 2 to 3, 4 inches. Well, you've got a branch, right? You're going through some woods, or you're going next to some rocks, or a pier, or a dock, or whatever it may be, and there's a branch in the water, right? And your carabiner is dragging, right? Just floating in the water because it's tethered to the kayak. It's coming along, it hits this tree, right? This tree underneath the water, and there it goes. Now you've caught the tree, and you don't know it because you're busy fishing or you're busy paddling. And this tree is now anchored to the bottom, and this thing is going to stop and snag you, and going to stop that kayak, and you're not going to know it, all right? That's one concern when you're, is just having the leash overboard with the non-locking or unlockable carabiner. To prevent that, right? Now, if you take your rod leash off, right, and you just lock it like this, right, and say it drops over, same scenario, you drive along, or you're paddle along, tree comes along, it's never going to snag it, all right? It's never going to snag it because it's locked. It will not allow that to go in there, okay? That's a big safety concern. Another safety concern, same kind of scenario, except you have now capsized, okay? And you've got all these multiple tethers hanging down, okay? And you've got a non-locking carabiner. And all this is held down by the weight of your rods or your anchor or whatever's holding on to whatever you have tethered, okay? They're all dangling down from the kayak, okay? Now you've got all this weight here, all right? And you've got this one stray little thing that dips over, right? And you've got this non-locking carabiner, and all of a sudden it passes right by these two and locks them in. Now you've got everything, one big bundle of terror, if you will, because if your leg gets in here, your arm gets in here, it snags your PFD, anywhere, your belt loop, your shoe, whatever, right? It's never going to be able to come out of there because this is now locked in there, right? And as you know, if your tether or leash is set up so that this is locked onto your rod or reel or whatever, then it's not going to pass through there. So whatever's on the end of this isn't going to pass through, and you've just created a multiple noose for whatever's going to get caught can now get caught and is locked. Okay, so if you use a locking carabiner and this happens, you're overboard and this is locked, right? This is just going to pass right by. It's never going to, no matter how hard I try, it's never going to lock on there, okay? Just cannot. So you're never going to end up with multiple things, all right? If you ever capsize and you have tethers and leashes, you can grab those tethers and leashes, that they'll be one by one if they have a locking, right? Your item is underneath. You can grab one by one, you can toss them over, you know where they're at, you can push them off to the side, you can do whatever you need to do, but you'll be able to pull each one of those tethers and leashes up one by one. Now the way I tell people is when I teach them how to re-enter the kayak and flip it back over is, if you've watched my order of rescue, you get on the kayak, right? And then you worry about all your gear. When I say worry about your gear, when you're on the kayak and you're safe, you're back on the kayak, you've got yourself rescued, your kayak and your paddle. Then you worry about your gear. If all of these are off to the side, these should never tangle with one another if you have locking carabiners. If you do not have locking carabiners, like I said, if it's underneath the kayak and you've got 3 or 4 coming from each side and this is swaying, even if it doesn't lock up when you're underneath with it, if you try to pull one and it's next to this other one and it gets locked up, now everything is locked up underneath the kayak. You're not going to be able to get that, right? Because the length is not enough either way to get your item back from underneath the boat. So if you want your stuff back and you want to do it safely, locking carabiners are the way to go. Locking carabiners, okay? There's several different styles. I'll put some links underneath. There's that slide lock one from Night Ice. Non-locking carabiners is like this, right? Non-locking. You can see these double S ones. They're very convenient for a lot of things. They're just not great for kayaking because they offer a lot of safety risks. Very easy to move, but it does not come the other way. It needs to lock. So these, right, all these cheap ones, inexpensive things can just go. Do not use those kayak fishing or kayak angling. You need locking carabiners of some sort, and you can have all kinds of different styles and sizes. And these range in price. I think I paid $2 for one of these. I may have paid $1.50 I think I paid $3 for 2 of them. I'll put the links in below to a few locking carabiners. And these can go from about $1.50 to $2 each, all the way up to around $75 each. And by no means do you need a $75 locking mountaineer carabiner for kayak fishing. You just don't. Nothing you're going to come across is going to need a carabiner that can hold 500 pounds. It's just not. Even when I use my carabiners as on the front, so I use it as a tow strap or a stand assist strap. I don't have one. I have one that's rated for 150 to 200 pounds, and it's not a mountain. It doesn't need to be mountain. It doesn't need to be climbing rated, I believe is what it's called. It doesn't need to be climbing rated. You're not climbing with it. It's not your life. Your life is not dependent upon the fact that this thing can hold X amount of pounds. Your life is dependent on whether or not this is locking. All right, that is what your life is dependent on. It is not dependent on the fact that it may or may not be climber rated. So that is my take, if you will. Please watch this time and time again. Please invest in locking carabiners and the right length and right type of tethers and leashes. All right. Velcro will work. If you have Velcro, Velcro will work. It is releasable and it does not, it's a type of lockable connector, right? Nothing's going to penetrate that Velcro. So if you have Velcro, Velcro works fine. Another thing I want to go over real quick is the type of knot or the kind of knot that you want on your tethers, on your carabiners. Now, some people will have a loose here, and a lot of whitewater rafters will have a loop right here so that you can pass another carabiner through it. Since we're not doing what whitewater kayakers do, I like this as tight to that carabiner as possible so it barely moves. And what that helps with is when you do go underneath the water, it creates less of a space here for things like this tree or another carabiner or something to slip through, and now you've got entanglement issues again. So unlike whitewater rafting, we are going to tighten this as tight as we can to that carabiner. If you need to use this as a leash or anything like that, you can always pass it through. This is why I like these carabiners, is that you can pass it right through the other carabiner if you need to, okay? But keep it tight, keep your leash tight to the carabiner as possible with no loops down here. We're not worried about trying to pass another carabiner through the bottom loop. And if you've seen whitewater kayaks do that, or if you're a whitewater kayaker or anything like that, you understand what I'm saying. And a lot of climbing aspects do that, but we do not want to do that. We don't have a need or a use for that. We want it as tight as possible to that carabiner. So again, Donald here with Floating Feathers Kayak Fly Fishing School. This has been a tips and tricks, and I hope that you all just follow this very safety conscious video. It's to me, this is one of the biggest things that I see with kayak anglers. I see it a lot with tournament anglers. I see a lot of it with recreational anglers. I even see it with recreational kayakers. Please use cuttable materials. Please use the right length, the appropriate length of tether or leash, and always always use locking carabiners for the reasons I went over and showed you in this video. I hope everyone follows these rules. Thank you all for watching, and every Tuesday, another tips and tricks right here on the Kayak Fly Fishing channel. Thank you all for watching. Tight lines and safe paddles.